Europe, 1902. For years we have documented the high strangeness of this mysterious year. The things that fell from the sky, mixed memories, the international blackouts of news, of fallouts, and strange phenomena that are still found at the local level. New things suddenly appeared in the world for which there were no precedents. We have seen that 1902 in the date codes of Nostradamus began the last days of the dwelling of the sun, meaning we are to expect a new sky, for this is where the sun dwells. We have reviewed the chronological proofs that show 1902 began the last days, and the chronometrical evidence from the Great Pyramid of Egypt showing 1902 began a final timeline, a countdown of 204 years to 2106 AD, return of the chief cornerstone, who comes to set the captives free. This monument, sloped at 51 degrees with 4 main faces for a total of 204 degrees, matching the number of years from 1902 to 2106, and matching the 203 levels of the Great Block's courses all the way to the top, where the 204th edition is the chief cornerstone, making 204 years, mirroring the 204 books of the future written about by Esdras. 1902 is year 1 of augmented reality, the year Artificial Intelligence X took over. Yeah, man, we've got some stuff to look at today. Pieces are falling together. I am going to blow your minds because my mind was blown. I've kind of lost my voice. I feel great physically. My voice is always last to catch up. Oh man, I've been doing a whole lot of construction work and yard work lately. Up to about 4 days ago, and I just got sick as hell. One day I just went out. Yeah, man. That was the day I watched all 3 Star Wars videos again. Oh my God. So we have, sounds good. All right, cool. Hey, One Tux, how you doing? I was going through some books you gave me when you were in Texas. Probably gonna do a video on that the book with Noah evidence in New Zealand. Oh, I'm just looking through the chat real quick before we get started because this is a mind beep. Can't even say that. I can't even say it on YouTube. I'm so excited about this video. So I got on Twitter. For those of you who don't know, I know some of you don't like Twitter, but it's the only place I can really be. I can do me. And right now, as we build Archaix Underground, but I'm gonna tell you now, I have been power posting on Twitter. I've got like 9,000 posts on Twitter now. I've only been doing it for a little while. I've got really good research, all kinds of quips, interesting things. As I'm putting videos together, I often come across little anecdotes, interesting things. And I find all these things, ships that have been found under mountains. People are always saying, well, Jason, man, if the whole world flat on Twitter. Yeah, man, they found a bunch of humans that have been turned absolutely, totally stone. One of them is a woman holding a baby wrapped in a blanket. She's turned totally solid stone. Listen, guys, it's the uniformitarians that keep destroying all the evidence. Remember, I posted the material in Glen Rose, Texas, that they were pretty upset in Glen Rose, Texas. So they're real cautious. When you go to asking questions about different things, they're real careful, because they had some scientists that came to Glen Rose, Texas with a hammer and a crowbar to damage those dinosaur footprints that had a human footprint on top of them. Yeah, those scientists couldn't let that stand, so they went out there and damaged that shit. Yeah, man. This is the world we live in. Absolutely. So I spent about 6.5, 7 hours putting this video together, only to lose the entire thing, because I have 3 screens. It's my work screens. But I'm just real big about my security. I do not keep anything on my computer. I don't care. Nothing stays on my computer. Everything stays on these SSD drives. Like this right here is 4 terabytes. It's tiny too. It's a little bitty thing. But it's got 4 terabytes. It's an SSD. It's external. And I do all my work inside these drives. And I got multiple copies of all my work. So I got real tired. Plus I was sick. So I left 5 or 6 Microsoft Word files open, exactly where I was categorizing, putting this video together, and I went to sleep. And overnight, Microsoft updated. Oh man, why didn't I see that coming? They don't do it every night. They do it once or twice a month. But they updated. I woke up in the morning, my whole computer had shut down. It shuts down for an update. I woke up and I lost everything, man. Let me tell you something, man. Me and God had a one-on-one. Yeah. Me and that boy had a one-on-one. I'm going to tell you now, I'm not proud. I'm not proud of that conversation. So I recovered after about 3 hours of feeling sorry for myself, posting about it on X, dejected. I started doing chores around the property. I'm still under the weather. So I'm like, man, I can't believe, man, I lost all that data, man. Damn. And the worst thing in the world for everyone who's a creative, anyone who knows that it's not just research, it's not just presentation. There is a level of creativity that goes into presentations. So I'll be damned, man, if it steals part of your soul when you've worked on something and you know that it's creative and you know that if you do it again, it'll never be the same. So I'll be damned. I went ahead and just went full tilt and just put it aside 3 hours later. And I just did the research over again and found a bunch of stuff I missed the first time, which was awesome. And I also found a whole bunch of new stuff because I wasn't looking in those directions. And you're going to see it all in one presentation here today. Man, I'm going to blow some minds. 1902 was year 1 of the artificial reality timeline that we're in right now. And I'm going to show it to you, because nothing I'm showing you in this video can be true. And yet it's absolutely 100% the truth. All well documented, every bit of it easily verifiable. And it is so amazing. This mirror, it's all in reverse. Everything that happened after 1902 is the exact same things happens in the 1800s in reverse. It is amazing. It also shows you what is a psyop and what was not. If it was a historical event that really happened in the 1800s, and the parallel for the 1900s is probably the deal. But there's many events that have been portrayed in the 1900s that everybody's saying, nah, man, nobody believes that bullshit anymore. That's a psyop. Yeah, NASA didn't do that. No, but the parallel for the 1800s shows it's a psyop. It is amazing what I'm about to show you today. All Archaix veterans, you already knew 1902 was a pivotal year. We already knew the importance of 1902. We just didn't really understand it until this video. I'm going to show it to you. So, the reason I'm telling you the story about having lost all that stuff is because in redoing it, I found more stuff that I missed, but I also went into a couple other directions for which I would have never got that data. So I'm glad I redid this. And then only when it was done, I told you now, me and the man upstairs, we had a heart to heart. I'm not proud of that conversation. Yeah, most of you would never even recognize the shit that came out of my mouth when I was talking to God about losing all my research. So it's incredible. It's fortuitous how things just work out, because somebody posted on Twitter, somebody who understands Microsoft Word pretty well, and they posted the instructions how to find a file that wasn't saved. I'm like, because I don't use OneDrive. In OneDrive, you in order to hit save file on Microsoft Word, you have to have OneDrive open. I don't have OneDrive open. I will not have OneDrive open. That's why I use these. I don't use a cloud for anything. So anyway, I saw the guy's post and I ignored it, and I'm glad I did. That was the oversoul. The oversoul wanted me to redo that research. That's how important this video is. The oversoul wanted me to find the new things and wanted me to find the things I missed. And then only after that research was conducted and I was proud and I'm ready to do this video, it just started, how does Graham Hancock say it? Niggle. It started niggling. And it's all in my brain, man. So I go back on X and I go find a comment and I look at the dude's instructions. I open up my Microsoft Word and I follow his instructions, and bam, whoop, 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 whoop. All three of my screens populate with all the unsaved Microsoft Word files. Man, I'll tell you what, there was two colloquials I was about to use, and both of them are just completely vulgar. I can't use them. I can't wait for Archaix Underground. So, anyway, that's what happened. The oversoul, I had no business talking bad to him, but I was sharing my feelings. That's the kind of relationship we have. So I don't hold nothing back. I said, man, shit, you've run me through the ringer since I was 17 years old. You've had your foot on my neck. Yeah, man, I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel anytime I go through something. I'm not going to hold anything back. And I sure didn't. I let him have it. And I'll be damned if it was all for the better. So let's get this video started, because we have the benefit of the original research. I was able to integrate it into all the new research, new discoveries. Crazy how that works. It is so crazy how that works. Yeah, Jamie. All right, so without further ado, some of you don't really know what I'm talking about in the intro. I'm going to show it just to kick this off right. There's a lot of people who do not understand the value of 1902 and what it means in the timeline for us. I'm going to show this one chart. I'm not going to show a whole bunch. It's on the Phoenix chronology of 138-year periods. Listen, after you see this video, you may agree with me. Every single timeline, every single cycle is 138 years. Every single one of them. I used to think maybe all our history goes back to 17, 18, 16, 16. I'm thinking now it's all background programming, and you're going to understand why when you see this video. It's because there is no way that events could have unfolded in the 1800s and in the 20th century, with 1902 being the hinge point and all these events just totally locked together. You're going to see it on chart. There's no way. It's not possible for all these random events all over the world in the 1800s to be the exact same series of events that happened in the 1900s, but in reverse. It's not possible. So either the 1800s was real history in another timeline, and starting in 1902, augmented reality began and replicated the 1800s, but in reverse, changing up certain minor details, or we're in the real reality right now, as far as the sim goes, and that prior to 1902, it's all background programming. I'll let you guys decide, but you're gonna have some major aha moments as this presentation goes. It is absolutely astounding what is being shown in this video. So this share my screen. I'll be sharing my screen for most of this presentation. Many of you do not know because you're new to my channel, you have not seen the older Great Pyramid videos. I'm very critical of other researchers who are always talking about the Great Pyramid because they never mention all these discoveries that I've made in Archaix. So there's a lot of stuff, new stuff that I've brought to the table that no one's ever mentioned, no published books, no historical archaeologists, no one's ever mentioned these things, and yet this data is all very easily verifiable. I am 100% of the mind that the Great Pyramid of Egypt is the very first pyramid. It is the original. It's not a prototype. It's not a prototype. It was built absolutely technolithically perfect, and every other pyramid in the world was an attempt to replicate its greatness. And that's why most of them have collapsed. They had no idea how difficult it was to make this monument, to make the structure. It is a piece of chronotexture, just like the original Stonehenge was chronotexture. What this means is that using machines and computers in the ancient world, a technologically advanced civilization understood that we lived in a construct, and they encoded all the physics constants. They encoded all their knowledges inside the rectilinear measurements that are found inside and outside of the structure. But the last days of this immense long timeline, which is nothing but a series of punctuated sims, the last days begins 1902. 1902 represents the foundation of this monument. And then the very first course, way down here, the very first course is 1903. The foundation is 1902. 1903, 1904, 1905, 06, 07, 08, 09, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Here we go. All the way up. 203 levels to the year 5999 Anno Mundi. We're missing a year to make 6,000 from the Adam and Eve pole shift reset, the new heavens and new earth, which started the whole pre-flood timeline. That year is represented as the chief cornerstone, the single one block that's missing. It is the largest stone of the entire pyramid. In fact, pyramid is a new word. It is Greek. The original name for the structure was pillar. And pillars don't exist unless they are emplaced to support something. What this pillar is made of is 2.5 million blocks. Each block is representative of a soul of man. A rectangular block that makes up the core masonry of the Great Pyramid has 6 faces. It has a top, a bottom, that has 2 sides. That's 4. Then it has 2 ends. That's 6 planes. 6 is the number of man. Man is mankind. Men here is a very ancient root from the pre-flood world. In ancient Egyptian, men means stone. Today it means people. It's the exact same thing. So in Archaix, I have shown that we have these fragments from the Christian mysteries that reveal to us the importance of the Great Pyramid and how it is a altar, it is a monument, it is a pillar. It is the very mechanism by which souls inside the construct will make their exodus. It's even encoded with the Exodus data, the Exodus information. For those who don't know, you see where this line is from the top to the bottom, 203 levels of stone. Well, that 203 levels of stone, once the cornerstone is put on top, changes the height of the pyramid from 5,448 inches to 5,814 inches. This is the height, but that's a vertical height. The longer height is called the apothegm, and it's from the base of the pyramid at the bottom all the way to the apex at the top. The apothegm is the sloping distance. It has been perfectly measured at 612.0 feet. Remember, in the 1800s, the books that were being published about the Great Pyramid told us specifically the Great Pyramid speaks in inches. inches equal solar years. All throughout the Great Pyramid, we find rectilinear measurements that are all divisible by 138. I've showed this over and over. I'm not going through this in this presentation. This is just a short recap to familiarize everybody that 1902 and the Great Pyramid are integral. They're integrally connected. So 612-foot Apothem is exactly 7,344 inches. It's the entire timeline. Let me show you. I don't even know where it's at. It is the entire timeline. I need to find the real quick. I'm gonna find the timeline, because again, I'm not trying to draw this all out. Okay, you know what? I got too much here. I'm not even gonna find it. So you guys know 5239 BC, all the charts in Archaix begin. Starts with the Anunnaki Ner chronology, 600-year periods going to the Great Flood, 3,000 years. Well, we have 7,344 years exactly from 5239 BC, going over the BC AD conjunct, where we lose a year, all the way to 2106 AD, the 6,000th year of the Anno Mundi timeline. 2106 AD is the 204th year since 1902. So the reason this is important is because 7,344 years is the entire length of the timeline. As I've shown multiple times, I have multiple videos about it. It's in 3 of my published books. But it in itself is 2448 years times 3. 3 is the number of finalities. A cycle is complete. So 2448 is the number here. Where's that number? Archaix veterans know. 2448 Anno Mundi is the year 1447 BC. It is the exodus of the Israelites out of Egypt. In the prophetic eschatological material in the book of Revelation, this is what we have. We have the righteous souls are told, to he who overcometh will I give him a white stone with a new name. The white stone with a new name is a promise to be in the monument of man. Right here, to be made up of the monument of man is to be guaranteed exodus. So, I will make you a pillar in the temple of my God is a reference to the Great Pyramid. Give you a new name as a new identity. And to he who overcometh will I give him a white robe. A white robe is a new avatar, because the avatar you use to get through this experience is no longer relevant. So you get a new avatar, a white avatar, way better than the one you have now, because you've graduated from this experience. You've made exodus. So in the eschatological material in the book of Revelation, the world is called Egypt. It's in the book of Revelation. I didn't make that up. So the world is called Egypt. And the reason it would talk about that is because the righteous souls are in an altar. And we know that the Great Pyramid was called the altar of Adam over and over in the old rabbinical literature. So my material on the Great Pyramid and its connection to the human soul is fantastic, but you got to read the book, Law Scriptures of Giza. You got to watch the videos to understand these connections. But for the rest of you, Archaix veterans, and those of you who are just starting to catch on to understand, now we're going to go into 1902 and we're going to show you how important 1902. 1902 comes up in the rectilinear measurements of the Great Pyramid everywhere. Now we're going to understand why. Why? These levels of blocks all the way to the top, from 1902 all the way to 2105, which is the year 5,999, waiting for one more year, which is 2106 AD, when the stone the builders rejected descends upon the monument of man, because he comes to set the captives free. He's not coming to set everybody free. He's coming to set the captives free. There are many people who have fallen in love with the world. They're not captives here. Captives are those who feel that they are confined and do not belong. They feel they do not belong here because they do not belong here. They have already outgrown whatever this construct can teach them. So, having said all that, let's do it. Got another file here. Let's do it. So you guys saw my little ad. This is my little ad. 1902 is at the apex. Why? Because it is the dead center. It is the hinge point in time for which all these events just mesh together. The reason it's shaped like a pyramid is because that's exactly how the time-space continuum works. Because the distance in time between each tier lengthens. Because the distance between 1901 and 1903 is only, look, it's only 1 year between them. It's 1902. So it's at the top. But 1900 to 1904, the distance between them is 4. Now 1899 to 1905, the distance is 6. Do you see? So the shape of the pyramid here is not arbitrary at all. It's a part of the architecture. These are why these are isometric projections. You must regard time-space as an architectural phenomenon because that's what it is. Welcome to year 1 of augmented reality, known in Archaix as the simulacrum. Perceivable reality is governed by artificial intelligence X, and this exit phase for souls passing through this construct has its start date at 1902 Anno Domini. I'm beginning to think that year of our Lord doesn't mean the Lord you're thinking of. Our present cycle is a mirror in reverse of the previous cycle. Man, how did we miss this? All right. So I have here, I'm going to have to increase the size of this font real quick. All right. So I'm going to blow this up. Let me get out of this one and go to the correct one. Okay. So I don't have the time. I don't have the tenacity. I'm already moving on in my mind to other projects, but I would love a volunteer after this video who will take these charts, and I will email them this entire presentation so they can build an awesome chart showing this in some other way other than I have. I don't know how you pack all this information on a big, it's going to take a poster board size, but this is phenomenal. Everybody needs to see all this. Yes, Pamela, big freaking BAMs are incoming. What I'm about to start showing you right now with 1901 and 1903, going on to 1900, 1904, 1899, 1905, 1897, across to 1907. What I'm about to show you, I'm going to tell you what happened in our era first. I'm always going to start with the 1900s first. I'm going to show you, okay, well, this is what happened after 1902. This is what we got documented in the historical record. And then we're going to go straight over to the parallel year in the 1800s. This is going to blow your mind. Okay, 1901. That's in the past. So we're going straight to 1903. In 1903, let's bring it all the way up. Everybody can see. In 1903, Henry Ford founded the Ford Motor Company in the United States. That's A for the year 1903. B for the year 1903 is the excavations begun at Asher in Iraq, Assyria's earliest capital. C for 1903 is the Jewish Bolshevik Party gains the majority in Russia due to a split at the London Conference of the Russian Socialist Democratic Party. Vladimir Lenin founded the Bolshevik faction of the Russian Jewish Social Democratic Workers' Party in London. London at this time was the seat of international Zionism. protocols of the learned elders of Zion becomes public knowledge. Of course, they said it wasn't true, but here's 3 independent things in 1903 that all happened. Nobody argues or contends that these happened. They're very well documented. 1903, Henry Ford founded the Ford Motor Company. Archaeologists begin excavating the capital city of ancient Assyria in Iraq, called Asher. And the Jewish Bolshevik Party gains the majority in Russia due to a split at the London Conference of the Russian Socialist Democratic Party. And Vladimir Lenin founded the Bolshevik faction of the Russian Jewish Social Democratic Party in London. So we have a D. 1903. The Hay-Bunai-Varilla Treaty between the United States and Panama, further addressing the construction of a Panama Canal. This is a continuation. It's a new treaty. It has to be modified because there are disagreements from the previous treaty. Figure out when the previous treaty was. So, the Hay-Bunai-Varilla Treaty between the United States and Panama. That's D. And E. E is the 5th event, the 5th and final event of 1903 that we're looking at. In 1903, Marie Curie and Pierre Curie discover radium and polonium, advancing radioactivity research. So this is 1903. This is what's been passed down to us in the historical record. So let's look at the parallel year. How do we know it's parallel? Because 1903 is only 1 year after 1902, but 1 year before 1902 is 1901. And what do we find? We find that the assembly line is invented by Ransom Eli Olds in the making of the curved dash Oldsmobile, which literally launched Oldsmobile, the major competitor at the time against the major competitor at the time when Ford Motor Company started in 1903. Now, in 1903, archaeologists just started excavating in Iraq. They started at the capital city of Assyria. But in 1901, the Code of Hammurabi is excavated at Babylon. In the Near East. And the text concerns the laws of ancient Babylon passed down from the Anunnaki. That's what it says. The very first line of Hammurabi's, the Code of Hammurabi, it venerates the Anunnaki as passing down these holy law codes. So we have a parallel with archaeologists in the Near East in 1901 and 1903. Then we have another parallel. We have another parallel with the Bolsheviks and what was going on in Russia in the political intrigues, because in 1901, American President McKinley is assassinated, and the vice president, a Jew named Roosevelt, becomes the president. This is paralleling 1903 when the Jewish Bolshevik Party comes into power in Russia. Now in America, the Jews come into power in the Oval Office. So Roosevelt, who is Jewish, he becomes the president of the United States when the president himself is assassinated. So the U.S. Treasury Department's Secret Service now receives an official mandate to provide presidential protection only after President McKinley is killed on September 6th. So this basically telling us that the Secret Service is actually already a controlled op. They are now going to protect the Jewish president. This is the reason this parallels 1903 is because 1903 is all about the Jewish Bolsheviks taking over the European Eastern powers, the Eastern Bloc, so which would later become the Soviet Union under their provenance. In the West, they took over almost at the exact same time. It was just more secretive. So Also in 1901, paralleling 1903 treaty with Panama, in 1901, there's the Hay-Pauncefote, the treaty between the United States and Great Britain concerning the Panama Canal. Isn't that interesting? In 1903, the United States had a treaty with Panama over the Panama Canal. But in the parallel year, 1901, the United States entered a treaty with Great Britain concerning the Panama Canal. And last but not least, the major scientific breakthroughs in 1903 by Mary Curie and the other Curie, and probably her husband, is paralleled in 1901 by Wilhelm Röntgen, who discovers X-rays transforming medical imaging. Now, we just went through parallels from 1903 that mirror conceptually the things that happened in 1901. This is only 1 year, and these aren't really good examples. Look at this chart. Before this video's over, we're going to go through all these years, and we're going to go through some epic, absolutely undeniable examples. That's just 1 year. Excuse me. I'm getting dizzy looking at my screen move like that. I know y'all are too. All right, let's do it. So 1904 on our timeline parallels 1900. 1904 is 2 years after 1902. So 2 years before 1902 is 1900. So in 1904, it's real simple. We have one little event. It's called the Treaty of Portsmouth, and it ends the Russo-Japanese War. But the parallel is 1900, which is the Treaty of Paris, which ends the Spanish-American War. Two separate wars in the world at two separate times, stopped by two separate treaties, separated only in space and time by 1902. In 1905, Albert Einstein's publication of the photoelectric effect and special relativity starts gaining ground. This is 1905. But the parallel is 1899, which is a discovery of the electron by J.J. Thomson, leading to advances in atomic theory that gave Einstein a foundation by which to put his theory of relativity together. These events right here are 6 years apart. They're 6 years apart, and they're only separated in space and time by the epicentral year of 1902. 1897. No, not 1897, 1907. I'm sorry, 1907. So in 1907 is 5 years after 1902. In 1907, concerning the communist revolution in Russia and attempt to overthrow the Russian monarchy, the prestigious National Geographic magazine in its May edition wrote, I'm quoting National Geographic, the revolutionary leaders nearly all belong to the Jewish race, and the most effective revolutionary agency is the Jewish Bund. The government has suffered more from that race than from all of its other subjects combined. Whenever a desperate deed is committed, it is always done by a Jew, and there is scarcely one loyal member of that race in the entire empire. It's talking about Russia. So National Geographic magazine in 1907 is already showing that there is a huge problem going on in Russia at the instigation of Jewish aggressors. This is 1907. So 1907, 5 years after 1902, well, 5 years before 1902 is 1897. So in 1897, we have Zionist insiders attending the Jewish World Congress held in Basel, spread a Jewish manifesto titled The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, a strategic, well-written plan on the domination of the world by Jewish agents and groups. This Jewish supremacism, a fundamental teaching in their Talmud. How is this related? It's related because anybody who has ever read the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion knows that that's exactly, these protocols show exactly how they took over the Russian Christian Romanov Empire and exterminated 22 million Christians. Anybody who's read the protocols can see it is a bullet point presentation of how you conquer a foreign country. And they did it. People are genius. I tell you all the time, man, these people are genius at what they do. Absolute genius. Somebody in the chat mentioned the Crimean War. Oh, we're going to get to it. So, yeah, this adds, listen, all these parallels I'm about to share with you guys, it adds a whole new level. It adds a whole new level to what's going on in social media. Man, I'm starting to believe that a lot of this stuff is total psyop and they're Agent Smiths. I'm telling you, this Agent Smith deal, man. You know what? I will get to it later. We'll get to it later. 1890, so not 1896, but okay. 1908 is 6 years after 1902. This is what happened. Young Turk Revolution led to multiple political executions and assassinations. Several targeted political assassinations in the Ottoman Empire and the Balkans. It's called the Young Turk Revolution, 1908. Also in 1908, in December 28th, a major earthquake rocked Messina, Sicily, followed by a tsunami 26 feet high that wreaked destruction throughout the city and pulled many people out to sea as the waters receded. Gas lines burst and fires burned throughout, making the total death toll to be about 120,000 people. Also, in 1908, in Egypt, archaeologist Neville, he found the ancient city of Egypt called Pithom, which is in the Bible. And he also found that the walls of Pithom confirm the biblical Exodus story that Pharaoh was shortening the straw rations as a punishment on the Israelites and yet still demanding them to make clay blocks. He found that the higher the walls went, the less straw they had. It's a very famous discovery. Now, that's the archaeologist Neville. These three incidents, the Young Turk Revolution of Assassinations and the great tsunami and earthquake that destroyed Messina in Sicily, and the Egyptian archaeological finding all happened in 1908. But 1908 is 6 years after 1902. And 6 years before 1902, we have 1896. In 1896, Empress Elizabeth of Austria is assassinated in Geneva, Switzerland in September. Several anarchist and political assassinations erupt all over Europe. All this is in 1896. Also in 1896, a submarine earthquake in the Tuscarora Deep, south of Japan, caused the sea to recede, leaving behind stranded fish and animals. Multitudes of people went out to gather the fish and animals for food, but they were overtaken by a 90-foot-high tsunami, returning at 450 miles an hour, which is the pressure of the Pacific coming back. It killed 30,000 people and washed a whole lot more out to sea, never to be seen again. Also in this year, the stele of Merneptah was discovered, which records events in year 5 of the Pharaoh's reign over Egypt, referring to the earlier conquests of his predecessors over the Hittites, Canaanites, Philistines, Libyans, and Israelites. On opposite side of the stele is a text by his predecessor, Amenhotep III. So here we have 3 things that happened in 1908 that are almost a direct mirror of the 3 things that happened in 1896. The political assassinations all over Europe, the tsunami and earthquake that washed a bunch of people out to sea, and a major Egyptian archaeological discovery that confirms more traditional historical records. So let me find, what is the next one? Let's see, the next one is going to be what, 1912 or 1913? Yeah. Where's this one right here? Okay, so we're not there yet. We got one more to go before we can switch. All right, we got one more to go before we switch deals. So this is going to be 1912. So we have three major events in 1912 that parallel three major events in 1892, with 1902 being exactly in the middle, the epicenter. So 1912, an intensely black object measuring approximately 250 miles long and 50 miles wide passed over the surface of the moon as seen from Earth. You know what that describes? 250 miles long, only 50 miles wide. That black sphere that's seen in the sky and recorded on woodcuts and on engravings in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance period, and which is the exact same shape of the Nemesis X object that is seen etched into Stonehenge that I showed just recently. That's the measurements right there. 250 miles long and 50 miles wide, meaning its length is 5 times its width. That's the spear. That's the spear we keep seeing. So anyway, that's what it's described as, an intensely black object. It's 1912. Now, Charles Milton found near Lake Cleot, I think that's misspelled, Cleot, a very large human skeleton, the jawbone almost twice as large as an ordinary man, but having a double row of teeth. This is from the Ancient Giants Who Ruled America, page 37. So we have an archaeological discovery. Now, the greatest opponents of this is a mind F right here. The greatest opponents of the Federal Reserve Bank were extremely wealthy men. Americans named Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Strass, the head of Macy's department stores, and the wealthiest, John Jacob Astor. All three of these men were specifically coaxed. They didn't want to. They all denied to get on the Titanic, but they were coaxed to participate in the maiden voyage of the Titanic across the Atlantic. With the sinking of the Titanic, the Vatican plan executed through her Rothschild agents and Jesuits had little to oppose her. So sinking the Titanic, which was probably the Olympic, it doesn't matter. This is the story we have. The sinking of that ship killed the three most wealthiest men, and these three men had a whole bunch of senators and congressmen in their pockets, and we're going to allow the Federal Reserve. Remember this fact. So, as soon as these three men are out of the way with the sinking of the Titanic, the very next year, the Federal Reserve Bank was passed, the greatest crime ever perpetuated against the American people. Now, these three events were in 1912. 1912 is 10 years, 1 decade after 1902. So 1 decade, 10 years before 1902, man, this is where it gets good. It is the year 1892. A Dutch astronomer named Muller watched a black object pass over the surface of the moon. Professor Barnard, using a 36-inch Lick refractor telescope, discovered a planet beyond Neptune. His discovery would not be made until 1906, when it was published in the August edition of the prestigious Nature magazine. This sighting could not have been of Pluto, which is so far and so tiny that even the orbiting Hubble telescope has only ever given us a tiny blurry image. And the Lick refractor would never have been able to see Pluto. So the object that he saw 10 years before 1902 was the Phoenix. Now, it is likely Bernard caught a glimpse of the Phoenix, just like astronomer Hoffman saw the Phoenix in 1764, 138 years before 1902. Also in 1892, gigantic human skeleton with a double row of teeth was found in the town of Proctorville, Ohio. Discovering Ancient Giants, page 21. So we got a gigantic human skeleton discovered in North America with a double row of teeth, found in 1912 and found also in 1892. We've got a black object passing over the sky in 1912 and in 1892. But here's the real humdinger. Remember, 1912, the Titanic sank in order for the conspirators to pass the Federal Reserve. In 1892, the most famous shipwreck of the year was the SS Western Reserve, sinking on August 30th in Lake Superior with a sole survivor named Harry Stewart. The shipwreck was discovered 130 years later in March of this year, 2025. The ship's name was the Western Reserve, the United States. The Federal Reserve is the Western Reserve. You just can't make this shit up. So crazy. And now we can switch to the next chart. Cool. So our next parallel dates, 1902 being perfectly in the middle, being equidistant, is 1913 and 1891. These are parallel years. Parallel years, 1913 and 1891. So in 1913, Chafoy Thebes earthquake in Greece caused severe damage and a bunch of casualties in 1913, 11 years after 1902. But 11 years before 1902, the Mino Owari earthquake in Japan killed 7,273 people and destroyed 142,000 homes, 11 years after 1902 and 1891. Next year, 1918 parallels 1886. In 1886, the Statue of Liberty was sent by ship to New York City from Rome, France, in 214 packing crates, and the statue is placed in New York Harbor on Bedloe Island. Also in this year of 1918, oh, I'm sorry. That's 1886. I read 1886 first. So we'll just do that. We'll go ahead and read 1886 first. In 1886, the Statue of Liberty was sent by ship to New York City in 214 packing crates. Now, also, the world famous Coca-Cola was first sold at Jacob's Pharmacy in Atlanta, Georgia in 1886, 16 years before 1902. But 16 years after 1902 is the year 1918. When the human Statue of Liberty is made, it is a famous aerial photograph of 18,000 officers and men at Camp Dodge, Iowa, who formed themselves into a huge Statue of Liberty form on the ground to promote the sale of the new wartime Liberty bonds. Also in this year of 1918, Coca-Cola rebranded and started its new contour bottle national advertising campaign. The famous long neck bottle they had with the ridges on it because they wanted you to be able to feel for a Coca-Cola in the dark, and they were trying to stop all their copycats because all bottles looked the same back then for sodas, and they wanted to stop all the copycats, so they patented their new bottle with ridges on it, and that's why Coca-Cola is the only one that's had those bottles like that. So crazy. You know what? That's so compelling to me that I'm going to have to, it's so compelling to me that I'm going to have to look this up online right now. hold on, guys. I'm 1918. 1918. Statue of Liberty, human Liberty bonds photo. I don't know if that's gonna work. Bonds. Hold on, man. Damn it. Okay, 1918 aerial photo. Liberty bonds ad. Let's see. We're gonna find it. It's supposed to be a world famous photo. 18,000 people formed. It's supposed to be an aerial photo, man, somewhere of 18,000 people that formed the Statue of Liberty, and it was taken. They took a picture from the air, and then they used that photo all over the United States to sell Liberty bonds. I don't know if any of you guys can find the photo online. Would you please post it on my Twitter? I can't have time during this video to search for this, but it's supposed to be 1918 Liberty bonds advertisement showing 18,000 military officers that got together for a photo shoot, and they're shaped like the Statue of Liberty. Yeah, I don't have time to look for it. That's so crazy. It's just so crazy. Jonathan Sherman, I got a guy. Okay, so let's move on. 1920 is where we're going. 1920 is 18 years from 1902. 1920 parallels 1886, meaning that 1886 and 1920 are 36 years apart. So remember, if you were to be thinking about this by the laws of probability, by the actually mathematical improbability, we're not just showing parallel years. The distance in time between the pair of the years is getting wider and wider and wider. But as you see, the focus is going to be getting greater and greater and greater, where the parallels are even more and more uncanny. So the separation of time between them isn't a deterrence whatsoever for them being an absolute blueprint in reverse of what happened before. Okay, I just found the picture. Far Out Aliens. Thank you, man. Thank you. I would really love to see that picture. All right. So 1920, the League of Nations is inaugurated. Britain receives a mandate to rule Transjordania and Palestine. The Jewish Bolsheviks win the Russian Civil War, and dissidents and political undesirables vanish by the tens of thousands into labor camps never to be seen again. So that's 1920. Not a good thing. But it parallels 1884. And in 1884, in November, near the Russian frontier of Katowice, the First International Assembly of Jews met from many nations and backgrounds and determined to work in concert to colonize Palestine. Do you see that? In 1920, the League of Nations, which is largely Jewish-controlled, the League of Nations is inaugurated in 1920, and Britain, which is Jewish-controlled through London, through the Rothschilds, receives a mandate to rule Transjordania and Palestine. Also, this has to do with Jews, Palestine. Now we have Jews, Palestine, and Russia. The Jewish Bolsheviks win the Russian Civil War in 1920. So let's go to the parallel year of 1884, and we find that on the Russian frontier, that's one of our denominators, the First International Assembly of Jews, that's another deal, met, and they decided to work on a plan to all work together despite their differences, different Jewish factions, to make a Jewish home in Palestine. All three common denominators met in 1920, 1920, and in 1884. 2 years that are absolutely parallel. All right, next. 1921 and 1883. 1921 is 19 years after 1902. It parallels 1883, which is 19 years before 1902. So in 1921, the Kilauea, Hawaii, it's a volcano. Kilauea, I don't know how to pronounce it. The Kilauea volcano had a major explosive period with unprecedented lava flows in 1921, paralleling 1883, which was the detonation of Krakatoa in Indonesia. Both volcanoes are in the Pacific. Catastrophic explosion. It's heard 3,000 miles away. Kills 36,000 people. 2 parallel years. Volcanic eruptions. 1922 and 1882 parallel. In 1922, tired of the manipulations of the Jewish industrialist Walter Rathenau, Germans kill him, and the Jewish global banking dynasty responds with the hyperinflation of the German mark, which was not at all due to wartime reparations. The Bolsheviks, having totally subdued all Russian opposition, then founded the Jewish-financed Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR. Proclamation is made in December for the formation of the USSR, proclamation worldwide. So, all those James Bond movies where you see the evil Russians and the Cold War and the USSR and all that, all they're really, Hollywood is really good at making the Russian people look evil. It's really good at making the German people look evil. The only evil that happened was to those people when outsiders attached to the world banks came in and hijacked their nations. Let's see. So that was 1922. The parallel year is 1882. What happened in 1882? 20 years before 1902? Russia passed the May laws against the Jews. These laws stopped them from certain financial practices, removing their businesses, and even forced many to migrate back into Eastern Europe. Back to the region known as the Pale of Settlement, set up in 1772. The region was almost half the size of Western Europe. Immediately, international Jewish financiers tried to collapse the Russian economy. Same thing they did to the German mark. The Tsarist Russian government began negotiations with the banking house of Rothschild for a loan. But the Rothschilds backed out of the loan because the Tsar would not allow the Jews back in. The Tsar published widely an edict that read, this is from the historical record, this is what the ruler of Russia published for his people to know in the year 1882. Quote, for some time, the government has given its attention to the Jews and to their relations to the rest of the inhabitants of the empire, with a view of ascertaining the sad condition of the Christian inhabitants brought about by the conduct of Jews in business matters. With few exceptions, they, the Jews, have as a body devoted their attention not to enriching or benefiting our country, but to defrauding it by their wiles and defrauding our inhabitants, and particularly its poor inhabitants. This conduct of theirs has called forth protests on the part of the people, to put an end to the oppression practiced by the Jews on the inhabitants and to free the country of their malpractice. So, 1882 perfectly parallels 1922, except it's the exact opposite. In 1882, Russia was dealing with the problem. In 1922, Russia had been completely subdued by the problem. Can't make this shit up. We're in a program construct. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in your mind either. Wait, man, we ain't even got to the juicy. There's going to be no doubt in your mind when we get to some. Remember, as this thing widens out, it becomes more and more detail specific. The parallels are just mind-boggling. All right, so we're looking at 1923 and 1881. Oh no, 1923 is 21 years after 1902. 21 years before 1902 is 1881, the parallel year. So in 1923, we have several violent typhoons in the Western Pacific, especially in August, storms that hampered rescue efforts after the Great Kanto earthquake. Severe storm surge and wind impact across the Philippines and parts of East Asia. Also in 1923, the official beginning of the USSR. Remember, it was the last day of the year that they announced the USSR. So now, in 1923, at the beginning of the year, is the official beginning of the USSR. The Russian Christian people are now enslaved by a foreign people, mostly atheistic Zionist Jews. 100,000 Russians die every year from the brutal slave labor camps all over the nation as the secretive regime builds military bases and installations. Globalists intend to use the USSR as an instigator to provoke Western markets into lucrative arms races that will benefit the international weapons manufacturers, the fossil fuel industry, and the world banks who will loan to them. This is all by design. 1923, but it parallels 1881, when a Pacific typhoon season culminated in a massive typhoon that hit Vietnam, causing major flooding and destruction. The typhoon struck Japan also, and Japan was struck in 1923. And in Japan in 1881, sinking more than 100 ships around Tokyo Bay. Also in 1881, remember in 1923, Russian Romanov Christians are being killed and executed. In 1881, Alexander II of Russia, a Romanov, is assassinated, and the Jews are blamed and suffer consequences in new Russian reforms. Can't make this stuff up, guys. It's all in the historical record, easy to look up. Everything's so easy to look up. So our next chart is 1924 and 1880, parallels 1880. So 1924 is 22 years. This is crazy here. This is 22 years after 1902, and it parallels 22 years before 1902. 1902 is the foundation of the Great Pyramid timeline. It is the countdown. And one fact I forgot to mention earlier, I mentioned that 2448, the apophthegm of the pyramid, encodes 2448 three times, 2448 being the Exodus number, and that the chief cornerstone comes to set the captives free. I totally forgot to tell you guys. I told you it was 204 years to the 1902 to 2106, the end of the timeline, is 204 years. What I forgot to tell you, it's 2448 months. I forgot to tell you, showing that 2106 is the Exodus. It's not the end of the timeline for those in the construct. It is the end of the timeline for those of us who don't want to participate anymore, for those of us who are just passing through, for those who are a part of the monument of man. I'm telling you all of this because it's very integral to understand this. This one here is mind-blowing. 1924 is paralleling 1880. David Davidson was an English engineer in 1924 who sought to prove Robert Menzies wrong in his theory that the Great Pyramid contained an internal timeline of world history encoded in its measurements. After extensive research on the monument and world history, he released his mammoth book with H. Aldersmith titled The Great Pyramid, Its Divine Message, a work supporting Menzies' theory. Unfortunately, as with others before and after him, his historical timeline was wrong because he was a Christian and he borrowed heavily from Archbishop James Ussher, having adopted dates from Ussher which were wrong. Many of his assertions were absolutely correct, but the calculations were corrupt. But it doesn't even matter. His theory was that the Great Pyramid had a message for the last days. His book was published in 1924. I have that book, and I have shown that book to you guys right here in my studio. I've also given copies of that book out to some of my Archaix veterans. That's 1924, 22 years after 1902. But 22 years before 1902 is 1880. And this is where it gets even more profound. Because in 1880, Charles Piazzi Smith, Astronomer Royal for Scotland, published in his findings in his book, which I also have in my library, and which I've also shown right here in this studio, Our Inheritance in the Great Pyramid. He showed that the Great Pyramid was a Sethite pre-flood construction, and he was in agreement with his predecessor, John Taylor, that the gigantic monument was definitely of biblical importance. But Smith's own theories went way beyond Taylor's. The popularity of the books of Taylor and now Smith influenced the renowned archaeologist Sir Flinders Petrie to travel to Egypt, and using advanced instruments capable of making precision measurements to the hundredths of an inch, he surveyed extensively the exterior and interior of the Great Pyramid. His own findings persuaded him that the structure encoded advanced astronomical and mathematical information, and terrestrial measurements of Earth and the solar system were all encoded within its structure. So it is absolutely incredible that using only Sir Flinders Petrie's measurements, that I have released an entire playlist full of videos showing you guys all these historical events recorded inside the Great Pyramid. It is amazing. But both of these books, 1880, Our Inheritance in the Great Pyramid, is released by Charles Piazzi Smith, Astronomer Royal for Scotland, in 1880. The parallel year exactly is 1924, when his work is picked up and made better by engineer David Davidson in The Great Pyramid, Our Divine Message. You can't make this stuff up. Just can't make it up. I told you this information is going to get more and more and more and more meticulous. Next one. 1927. 1927, 1877. So in 1927, which is 25 years after 1902, the Chinese Civil War begins between nationalists and communists in 1927. But 25 years before 1902, the Russo-Turkish War begins and the Nez Perce War begins in North America. It seems like it's a time for civil wars. These aren't normal wars, because there's a huge amount of crossover between the Turkish Empire, Ottoman Empire, and the Russian Empire, because many of their citizens spoke both languages. There's huge crossover. It's like a civil war trying to maintain. So the Russo-Turkish War was very close to being like a civil war. The Nez Perce War was very close to being like a civil war. Why? Because the Native American Indians were already among us and living among us by 1897, and many of them have adopted American ways and were already speaking English. It was like a civil war. Also, 1927, the parallel war for 1877 is Chinese Civil War begins between the nationalists and the communists. These incidents are 50 years apart. The next one is 1928 and 1876. 1928 is 26 years after 1902. Alexander Fleming discovers penicillin, a breakthrough in antibiotics. The first regular television broadcast also began in 1928, marking another leap in communications technology. But the parallel year is 26 years before 1902, 52 years earlier, when Alexander Graham Bell was granted a patent for the telephone, revolutionizing communication. So these years parallel each other, not only in the fact that a new communication technology entered the field, but Alexander Graham Bell and Alexander Fleming were both inventors of major scientific breakthroughs. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin. 2 years, 52 years apart, very similar in nature. Some of the events are very similar in nature. And you have to understand too, guys, this is one man going through a bunch of material, putting this together. Can you imagine if 100 errants spent 100 days going through this pyramid chart, showing these dates and finding all the parallels? Yeah, we could probably put together 100 videos, because the parallels are going to be everywhere, down to the lowest common denominators. Even the names of individual participants, first and last names, are going to be the same in different incidents. I guarantee you, a bunch of times last names will be first names, and first names will be last names, depending, because you got to take 1902 and you got to go down like a single vertical line, 1902, and then this pyramid, this triangle folds because it's a mirror. It's a mirror. We're going forward from 1902, but from 1902 we're going backwards. This is all reflected in the holography. 1875. Oh, wait a minute, I skipped one. 1875 and 1929. Jason, what happened in 1929? Well, the stock market crashed. Great Depression. So, $1929. Mount Pelée, Martinique, significant explosion. This is a volcano. It's even relative to 1902 because Mount Pelée on Martinique in the French Caribbean exploded and incinerated 30,000 people in 1902 in the month of May. But here, Mount Pelée in 1929 exploded again. But Martinique isn't populated after that. After the 1902 deal, people stayed away. So that's 1929. Also in 1929, Italy recognizes Vatican City in Rome as an independent state, signaling the reemergence of the papacy as a political power. The San Francisco Chronicle depicted the event on the front page and read, Mussolini and Gaspari sign historic pact. They heal the wound of many years, quote, unquote. This terminology found in the newspaper in 1929, heal wound of many years, referring to restoring power to the Pope. This mirrors the prophecy in the book of Revelation in Revelation chapter 13, verse 3, concerning the papacy. It says, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Kind of makes you wonder why. Why would the Italian newspaper refer to the Pope in this way? The heel was wound after many years. Well, let's look at the parallel and see when he was wounded. Because this was 27 years after 1902 in 1929. But 27 years before 1902 is 1875, when the Aschaix Icelandic volcano erupted with a major tephra fall, paralleling the volcano of 1929. But even more so, the Roman question happened in 1875. The Roman question is an incident. The Roman question was a controversy between the Pope and the Kingdom of Italy, wherein Pope Pius IX publicly declared that He and the Vatican were prisoners of Italy. He played the victim after losing the Papal States, but still declared 1875 to be a holy year and he still maintained his role as head of the Roman Catholic Worldwide Church. But because of new zoning in the Roman question around Italy, the Italian government literally isolated the Vatican. All they had was a little Vatican, the little Vatican in a little area. He had lost all the Papal States. So, this raises an interesting deal. I was on live yesterday. I want to mention this because it's relevant. It's important for people to understand and know. I was on live yesterday with Rise Above. They were having a get together, a meetup in the UK, and it looked really successful. I got to see everybody that was in there, and Martin Leakey and I'll be going on his channel pretty soon. But Martin Leakey and I were on a panel with allegedly Dave. Dave seems like a really great guy. His research goes a totally different direction than mine. But he had mentioned one thing as evidence that a lot of Europeans were black, and a lot the British people were originally black. And I had to counterpoint, and I mean, we didn't argue or anything. Everything was very civil, but I couldn't be quiet about the fact that there's a lot of researchers out in the field, especially on YouTube, who have tried to say that the term Black Irish means that the Irish were black, or the black nobility means that yeah, man, everybody knows that original kings and queens in Europe were black. It's called the black nobility. That's not what it means at all. It has everything to do with this incident right here. In 1875. And this is what I was telling the panel yesterday. And when you hear the term Black Irish, or you hear the term black nobility, or when they describe a king, queen, duke, earl, or anything as being a member of the black nobility, this isn't a reference to a member of some dark elite or anything like that. You have to understand, the papacy was exercising powers that other European countries did not give them. And the kings and queens and the monarchies of Europe were pissed when the Pope would give out earldoms, would give out earl titles and duke titles, and he would give out prince titles. And sometimes he would even give out king and queen titles. Anytime the Pope assigned somebody a royal title, that was in the Papal States. Those are the European kingdoms that were controlled by the papacy. The other European countries did not honor that shit. They called them the black nobility. The Irish were called the Black Irish because the Irish people are Roman Catholics. Unlike the Protestants of the British, it has nothing to do with skin color. It has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with the monarchies who are Caucasian in Europe would not allow the Pope to dictate to them who had an earl title, a duke title, a baron title, who could be a prince, who was a king and a queen, because the monarchies went by blood. The popes went by entitlements and granting entitlements, and this pissed off a lot of European kings and queens. Protestantism was actually fueled by conspiracies of the monarchies who were trying to overthrow this, because the Pope was getting out of control, giving out titles, knowing that by giving those titles, he would have their forever allegiance. That's where black nobility comes from. So yeah, that's where it comes from, guys. You hear those terms, black prince, black king, black duke, black, it had nothing to do with skin color. It had everything to do with the fact that the Pope was the one that gave them their title. They didn't get their title through their bloodline. All right. So anyway, I just wanted to address that. It was one of the points of contention yesterday. Other than that, we got along just great. It was awesome talk, man. Okay, so 1875 and 1929, we're done with that. So we move over now to the next chart. Look, we're not even halfway through, guys. Look at these notes. Look, we're almost halfway, but we're not even halfway through. And you guys are, the very final date is going to blow your mind. But so are quite a few before that. But like I told you, as it widens out, you would expect there would be a diffusion of information. You would expect that the distance in time between parallel events would alter the parallel events in fundamental ways that they could not be recognized. That's not what's happening. They're gaining sharpness and clarity. 1933, 1871. So we know what happened in 1933. 1933 is a part of our timeline. Why am I saying that? Because there's still a few humans today that were alive in 1933. Still a few, not very many. Not very many. But there's still a few humans today that were alive in 1973. Maybe not. Excuse me, 1933. Maybe not. I might be wrong. Might be wrong. Might not be true. So you let all those Jewish fundraiser Holocaust organizations tell it. There's a whole bunch of them still surviving. I don't even understand how many can still be alive today if so many escape. If y'all all escaped the Holocaust, how the hell are you all over here still raising money? I don't even get it. Shit kills me. So 1933. 1933 parallels 1871. This is crazy too. 1933, Adolf Hitler is elected Chancellor of Germany. 1 month later, the Reichstag building, a famous building, was destroyed in a fire that was discovered to be an act of communists in Germany opposing the Nazi Party. Communists were funded by the Jewish Bolsheviks. So Hitler unified Germany and begins removing Jews from positions of power, initiating the Third Reich. This is 1933. Pay attention. It's 31 years after 1902, but it is a reflection of the events 31 years before 1902. In the year 1871, when Prime Minister Otto von Bismarck of Germany, known as the Iron Chancellor of Germany, unifies the nation and instigates a series of victories against the French, against Denmark, Austria, and proclaims a German empire. The Franco-Prussian War ends, and the communists in Paris set up the Commune of Paris and held the government for 2 months before they were crushed. 20,000 people dying in the conflict. This was the first communist revolution in history. 1933 is undoing a lot of this. 1933 is undoing a lot of the work of the Jewish Bolsheviks, just like 1871, Otto von Bismarck undid a bunch of the work of the Jewish Bolsheviks. But in 1933, it's a different scenario because Adolf Hitler was leading Germany into a trap. Do I think he knew? No, I don't think so at all. Absolutely not. No, the trap was by the international Jewish bankers. World War II was a trap for Germany. They were set up from failure from the beginning. 1935 and 1869. So now we get to the next one. 1935, the New Deal. 1935 parallels 1869. In 1935, this is the New Deal. The New Deal is what was this one? This is when we got our money. Look in the back of the dollar bill. You got a pyramid with an eye over it. I. Very interesting discovery, man. That Rise Above was talking about. The I spelled out as EYEE. Actually, in some language, actually means money. I don't know what it is, but it's anyway putting money over the pyramid. So remember, this is 1935. They're using the pyramid for an evil form now, but it's not. Originally the pyramid is a holy form. It is the altar of Adam. It is the pillar of Enoch. It is the monument of the Sethites. The Great Pyramid is the gate of Rostau. It is in the Necronomicon. It is the gate of Yashakak. This is the gate by which the captives make their exodus. So it's very interesting. 1935, the evil empire now puts the Great Pyramid underneath the eye of Mammon. This is money, the all-seeing eye. 1935 is the New Deal. It is 33 years after 1902. The discovery of nuclear spin by Isidore Rabi. Isn't that an interesting name? The discovery of nuclear spin by Isidore Rabi. Rabi or Rabbi. Leading to developments in quantum physics, 1935. Also in 1935, the completion of the Hoover Dam, a notable feat of engineering and modern architecture. Now, the Hoover Dam, there is evidence that the Hoover Dam, although it's modern architecture, the Hoover Dam is actually built over a previous dam from an unknown civilization. This is important because of the parallel year of 1869. Now, 1935, the Nazis condemned the Jews for financial malpractices and ordered them out of their country, Germany, arresting many of them in 1935. This is 33 years. 33 being the number of Masonry, 33rd degree, eye over the pyramid after 1902. But 33 years before 1902, we have 1869. 1869, Dmitri Mendeleev publishes the first periodic table of elements. This is a scientific breakthrough, just like the nuclear spin, which introduced quantum mechanics. Also in 1869, paralleling 1935, is the completion of the Suez Canal, significantly impacting global trade routes. The completion of the Suez Canal was epic because we have, on the authority of many archaeologists in many old books from the 1800s, that before they built a new Suez Canal, there was megalithic architecture in that area, showing that an ancient unknown civilization sometime in the distant past had already had a canal there. Very interesting. Yeah, William Corliss Science Sourcebook Project has articles in there about archaeology showing that underneath the Egyptian desert at Suez, there was already evidence of a megalithic canal in ancient times, way before the 1800s when they built another one. So, (1869). Also, 1869, the U.S. government abolished the disenfranchisement laws that gave over white-owned properties to blacks because of the financial abuses of the carpetbaggers, who were primarily Jewish moneylenders, occurring, and the KKK was dissolved by federal pressure. This parallels 1935, where the Nazis condemned the Jews for financial malpractices in Germany and ordered them out of their country, just like the United States ordered the carpetbaggers out of the country. History has all kinds of ways of creating titles to obfuscate what's really going on. Can't make this stuff up. So that's 1935 and 1869. Now we go to 1938 and 1866. So in 1938 of our calendar, 36 years after 1902, Germany annexes Austria for the unification of the Third Reich. Now, 36 years before 1902, making a total of 72 years before 1938, the 7 weeks for the unification of Germany involving Prussian ascendancy over Austria is endured. 7 weeks of military operations for the unification of Germany. Prussia ascends over Austria. It is an exact parallel of 1938, with Germany annex Austria. Damn, look at this one. You didn't expect to see that, did you? Jason, what is that? That looks really weird. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. You see these 5 arrows? 1939 to 1865, 1940 to 1864, 1941 to 1863, 1943 to 1862, 1944 to 1861, 1945 to 1860. What in the hell am I showing you? What I'm showing you is mind-blowing, because I have told you guys often, if you just do a little bit of research, you will find out how the Civil War unfolded. I don't know if all the battles and everything we're told about the Civil War was real, but I do know that the Jewish-controlled Rothschild banking dynasty wanted to separate the United States into two countries to make them more easily manageable and pit them against each other as the North and the South. This was long-term planning. The entire Civil War was caused because the economic stranglehold on the South. They weren't able to sell all their textile. They weren't able to sell all their produce and all their meats and all that because of all kinds of embargoes and all kinds of things that were going on, and they were all caused by the Jewish banks. The North had all kinds of textiles and everything it wanted to sell and could freely send them to Europe and sell on. And the North's economy was booming, and the South wasn't. And the North would not entertain the South for any type of commerce and trade, and no economic relief or anything. Basically, the South was forced into forming the Confederacy. It was all by design. And then the Confederacy got loans in order to buy militaries and do every bit of it was caused. The reason this is interesting is because in our timeline, World War II began in 1939. And it went through 1940, 1941, 42, 43, 44, 45. And in our timeline, it perfectly parallels the exact years on the other side of 1902 for 1860. When the Confederacy is founded, 1861, 62, 63, 64, and 65, the duration of the Civil War. The common denominators is that the Civil War and World War II were both instigated and financed by Jewish banks. Every bit of it. You can't make this stuff up. This is a perfect parallel. It's all equidistant. Excuse me. 1939, Prime Minister I can't pronounce these Romanian names. Armin Calinescu of Romania was assassinated by Iron Guard members in 1939. The parallel year was 1865, when U.S. President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth in 1865. 1865 assassination of Abraham Lincoln parallels 1939 assassination of Prime Minister Armin Calinescu of Romania. Perfect parallel. 1939, Germany and Russia invade Poland. They maintained separate military operations. World War II begins. The famous movie, listen to this is crazy. The famous movie Gone with the Wind with Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh debuts. It sells out all over America. The background setting is the Civil War in the very start of the Reconstruction. Every one of these yellow lines you see here. The movie Gone with the Wind, 1939, parallels across 1902 all the way over here. The background for the movie is all these arrows here, all these years here. This is Gone with the Wind, the movie, which came out over here in 1939. Can't make this stuff up. There's almost no difference between a Hollywood cinematic production and the historical record. They're all just programming in the field. Can't make this stuff up. Told you I was going to blow your minds today. The movie Gone with the Wind with Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh. It is famous. I've seen it. It came out in 1939. In the background setting, for the movie is 1865, the parallel year for 1939. But the movie also covers 1864, 1863, 1862, 1861. It's crazy. Frankly, Scarlett, I don't give a damn. Yeah, man. I can get a little theatrical every once in a while. So, yeah, man, it just blows your mind, man. It's crazy. So 1939, Germany and Russia invade Poland. They maintain separate military operations. World War II begins 1939, paralleled by 1865. 1865, Civil War ended April 9th with the surrender of the Confederate League to Union General Ulysses Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, and the Reconstruction begins. So the very beginning of the Civil War in the very beginning of World War II in our timeline is the very end of the Civil War in a previous timeline, in the mirrored timeline. Can't make this stuff up, guys. You know, I wouldn't make it up. Reality is too curious and incredible and enigmatic for us to make up any facts. So, it's just crazy. Here it is, 1940. 1940, World War II is fought. Parallels 1864, the Civil War is being fought. 1941, World War II is being fought. 1863, it's the Civil War is being fought. All these are parallel years. Absolutely mind-blowing. So after the wars are over, we get to, well, we have to look at 1860, the Civil War fought. Well, actually 1860, Confederacy is founded, and it parallels 1944, which is really the last year of the fighting. Most of the fighting's already done. We just dropped two bombs, 1945, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But this leads us to 1945. 1945. You need to see these dates. This is 1945 and 1859. 1945 and 1859. So you know that in 1945, the United States creates an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, twice, with the atomic detonations over Japan, over Hiroshima, and Nagasaki. This is in 1945, the very first human-made EMPs. However, in 1859, the parallel year to 1945, we have a very strange event called the Carrington event. It is an electromagnetic disturbance. Many people say it is a natural EMP from an X-flare, but it knocked out our infrastructural telegraph lines that have been laid all over the United States. It burned wires everywhere. It popped light bulbs and stuff. But this was the Carrington event of 1859, and it has gone down in the historical record as an X-flare activity, which would be an EMP, and it parallels 1945, where we detonated 2 EMPs over Japan. Next is 1946 and 1858. 1946 is 44 years after 1902. Jewish-dominated United Kingdom begins convening in London. The Jewish-dominated United Nations begins convening in London in 1946. And it executes German officers at the illegal Nuremberg trials. Yeah, the Nuremberg trials were nothing but Jewish retribution. They were just exacting revenge on German officers. So this is 1946. Jewish-dominated United Nations begins convening in London and begins executing German officers at the illegal Nuremberg trials. 1946, 44 years after 1902. 44 years before 1902, In 1858, we get the British Parliament altered the oath of allegiance to allow the Jewish mogul Lionel Rothschild a seat in Parliament in London. It's crazy. So in 1858, a Rothschild, one of the ruling bankers of the world, gets he doesn't have to swear on the Bible. They alter the oath of allegiance so he doesn't have to swear on the Bible, and he gets a seat at Parliament in London. 44 years before 1902, 44 years after 1902, the Rothschild-dominated United Nations convenes in London. Imagine that. Such a parallel. Next one, 1856. And 1948. In 1948, 46 years after 1902, the first Arab-Israeli war begins. Civil war in Costa Rica ends 46 years after 1902. 46 years before 1902 is the end of the Crimean War with the Treaty of Paris. So we have major wars beginning and ending. Remember, we're going in different directions. Just like World War II began, Civil War ended. We're going in different directions from 1902. Same absolute, every year is the same concepts. Different players, different names, same geographical regions, just going in different directions. It's crazy. So crazy. Those are 92 years apart. 1950 parallels 1854. So in 1950 is the start of the Korean War, initiated by North Korea's invasion of South Korea. 48 years after 1902, but 48 years before 1902 is 1854, start of the Crimean War, with Britain, France, and Turkey declaring war on Russia. Crazy. Now we have the start of two separately, entirely different wars. These are 96 years apart. (1956) and 1848. So 1956 is 54 years after 1902. Hungarians hold many protests when they discover that the Hungarian Communist Party officials were all Jewish. As soon as the people of Hungary found out and word spread, they had widespread protests when they found out that the Communist Party in Hungary were actually Jewish. 1956, 54 years after 1902. But 54 years before 1902 is 1848. Karl Marx, a Jew, and Frederick Engels publish the Communist Manifesto. 108 years apart. Can't make this stuff up. (1959) and parallels 1845. In 1959, 57 years after 1902, Hawaii and Alaska are admitted into the United States. But 57 years before 1902, Texas is admitted into the United States in 1845. Isn't that something? So crazy. Look how far down the pyramid these two are. Far down the pyramid of dates, going forward and backward in time. And yet they lined up perfectly. 1845 and 1959 lined up perfectly. 1959, Hawaii and Alaska are admitted into the United States. And in 1854, Texas is admitted into the United States. Man, I can't say it enough. You can't make this stuff up. 1963 and 1841. 1963 and 1841. In 1963, 61 years after 1902, President John F. Kennedy is assassinated. But 61 years before 1902, President Harrison dies, and many researchers claim he was poisoned, that he did not die of a pneumonia. Yeah, I don't believe any of our presidents died of natural causes. I know a lot of stuff about all the assassinations in the 1800s. So, yeah, President Harrison was probably poisoned. Either way, presidents, yeah, we've only had 47 presidents, right? 46 presidents. So, presidents don't die every day. There's 365 days in a year. Think about that. There's 365 days in a year. And we got over 200 years of American presidents. So, it's a rare thing to find. Presidents don't die all at the same time. So anyway, here it is. 1963, President Kennedy assassinated. Now, because of the Calendrics, remember I've showed in many presentations in the past, we can ascertain basically what happened based off its calendrical parallels. Well, in this instance, because we know President Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, and this parallels 1841, that to me is evidence that these researchers are correct. President Harrison did not die of pneumonia. That's a cover story. He was poisoned. He was killed. Here it is, 1841, 1963. Oh, we're getting down to the very bottom. 1968 parallels 1836. 1968 is the completion of the Gateway Arch of St. Louis. It is important because it is a massive piece of architecture that is the only one like it in the world. It makes it unique. The completion of the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, done in 1968, 66 years after 1902. But 66 years before 1902 is 1836. The completion of the Arch de Triomphe, the triumphal arch in Paris. You've seen it, the big old triumphal arch. It too is very unique, world-renowned architecture. They parallel each other perfectly. And now we get to the final one. This is the best one of all time. Remember, you can use Calendrics to ascertain the veracity of event. Was something a psyop or was it serious? Here it is. 1969. The very bottom one, 1969, parallels 1835. What happened in 1869? In 1869, the U.S. Space Agency, NASA, perpetuates the biggest hoax of all time in pretending to send astronauts to the moon. The reason the hoax was so good is because most of the participants weren't let in on it that this was a hoax. They were really doing their jobs, getting paychecks, doing all kinds of things. They did not know they were participating in a fraud. Only the top people at the top of the pyramid knew that everybody below them, man, was it's all show and mirrors. You guys have seen the footage of the astronauts. They were pissed. The first time that they showed their faces after the deal, they were all happy before, all happy about going to the moon. Then all of a sudden, when they're back, the very first time they're on camera, they look fucking pissed. I'd be mad too. If right before I was about to go up on a rocket that I actually did real training for years and had I had all kinds of instruments put up my butt and I had to walk funny and all that stuff. You made me go through all that. And then right before the rocket goes up, you pull me and put me on an American warship and send me out to the Atlantic. Because when the capsule lands, we have to do the switcheroo and make it look like you came out the capsule. I'm on a ship the whole time. What'd I do all that training for? Yeah, they were pissed. It was a psyop from the beginning. No men have ever passed through the radon belt. 1969, U.S. Space Agency, NASA perpetuates the biggest hoax of all time in pretending to send astronauts to the moon. To the moon! Hoax. Participants think they're participating in something real. And the moon. Those three common denominators right there. Very interesting. Why is it interesting? Why is it so interesting when this is associated to 1902? Well, what do you guys really know about cinema in 1902? Did you know this movie came out in 1902 called A Trip to the Moon? Right here, where they showed that how they got to the moon was a rocket, just looked like an Orion rocket. How did you know in 1902 that they would send moons to how did you know? In 1902, this movie, anybody can watch it on YouTube. It's called A Trip to the Moon, 1902. This movie is a silent movie, but you can sit there and watch it, listen to it. I mean, you sit there and watch it, and it's amazing. The predictive programming. In this movie, A Trip to the Moon, humans go to the moon. And they go in a rocket. It's crazy. Now, even has a little capsule that comes out and lands on the moon. It is crazy. That's this movie, 1902, A Trip to the Moon. But that's not our parallel. This is the isometric epicenter for this amazing foundational calendrical isometric projection. 1969, the Apollo NASA hoax. Parallels. This is 67 years after 1902. But 67 years before 1902 is 1835. And we cannot ignore what happened in 1835. Because in 1835, this happened. In 1835, the Great Moon Hoax was a series of 6 fraudulent newspaper articles published by the New York Sun claiming that the renowned astronomer Sir John Herschel had discovered life on the moon. The hoax, which was intended as a satire but was widely believed as truth, became one of the most famous media deceptions of its time. Guys, you can't make this stuff up. This is out of the 1835 newspaper right here. Here's the moon, according to the 1835 newspaper. You can't make this stuff up. This is out the 1835 newspaper. He's envisioning how the moon looks. He said the moon was inhabited. Moon had life forms. It had animals. It had water. This is what in 1835. The 1835 Great Moon Hoax was a series of 6 fraudulent newspaper articles. You have to understand, the people reading the newspapers weren't told it was fiction. That's why it parallels 1969 so bad. NASA didn't tell anybody this was BS. It was fiction. They put it out there as this is a real event. In 1835, this was called the Great Moon Hoax because it was a hoax. But the articles were released as if this famous astronomer actually saw these things and found these things on the moon, and everybody got involved, and it was a major media affair. You can't make this stuff up. 1835, the Great Moon Hoax, is 67 years before 1902, when A Trip to the Moon is shown in theaters. Trip to the Moon. 67 years later is our NASA psyop of 1969, the Apollo mission to the moon. Can't make this stuff up, guys. That's why I put right here in the middle of this deal. Welcome to year 1 of augmented reality. That's 1902. Known in Archaix as the simulacrum, perceivable reality is governed by artificial intelligence X, and this exit phase for souls passing through this construct has its start date as 1902. Our present cycle is a mirror in reverse of the previous cycle. Remember, it is a tenet of Archaix that too many coincidences exhibits no coincidence at all. Let's see. I need to move over here. Stop sharing. 1 hour and 59. I squeezed all that in an hour and 59 minutes. Man, how did that happen? Okay, so as is my habit, I do. When I do really technical deals, I just want to know. Put it in the comment section if I made my case. Also, give me a like, because I think some of y'all have been short me on those likes. I don't think that many people out there hate me. Yeah, man. It's a massive. Now you have to understand, guys, I'm giving you the footnotes of history. It would really take many of us to go through that pyramid chart and those dates and compare those dates. And I promise you, we can fill whole volumes of books of the parallels. We could. We could enter all this data into a software program and let the software program find all the parallels, and it would blow our minds. It would blow our minds. This was all found by one man over a period of 3 or 4 days, just looking at all these different things. You can imagine how much I missed. But the very fact that I could show what I did show shows you the importance of 1902. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I will close. Thank you guys for the donations. I wasn't able to see the chat during my presentation. I'm still getting better, and I was really excited about getting that one out. Man, I was excited. I know I've been talking to Martin. I'm supposed to go on Martin's channel pretty soon, and we've been setting up our list. We got a lot of people we're bringing on to Archaix. We've already got a long list of emails we're sending out. So, yeah, man, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, man. I'm going to rewatch it. You guys know I always rewatch my videos hours later, like deep into the night. I'll rewatch one. I'll re-listen to a video, but I'm actually going through the chat. I'm always going through the chat. Don't think you put comments here, I don't read them. I promise you I do. Trolls know it because they don't last long. Yeah, it's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I'm going to go ahead and exit with the same intro because it's unique to this video. So here's the intro. I love you guys, but I need to move around. Those of you in my Cypher community, I think we're touching base tomorrow. I think I'm pretty close to being ready. All right, love you guys. Europe, 1902. For years, we have documented the high strangeness of this mysterious year. The things that fell from the sky, mixed memories, the international blackouts of news, of fallouts, and strange phenomena that are still found at the local level. New things suddenly appeared in the world for which there were no precedents. We have seen that 1902 in the date codes of Nostradamus began the last days of the dwelling of the sun, meaning we are to expect a new sky, for this is where the sun dwells. We have reviewed the chronological proofs that show 1902 began the last days, and the chronometrical evidence from the Great Pyramid of Egypt showing 1902 began a final timeline, a countdown of 204 years to 2106 AD, return of the chief cornerstone, who comes to set the captives free. This monument, sloped at 51 degrees with 4 main faces, for a total of 204 degrees, matching the number of years from 1902 to 2106, and matching the 203 levels of the Great Block's courses all the way to the top, where the 204th edition is the chief cornerstone, making 204 years, mirroring the 204 books of the future written about by Esdras. 1902 is year one of augmented reality, the year Artificial Intelligence X took over.